Deborah Henderson is the manager at Clayton's Farmers Market, a small market in Missouri. When she first assumed her position, she was very excited. She was working with farmers in her area, trying to seek the prosperity of her community with a nonprofit. However, when she actually got into her position, she was experiencing a lot of problems. Farmers didn't want to work with her. The problem was they didn't want to pay for the fees, permits, and certifications it took to sell at a farmer's market. So Deborah took matters into her own hands. She decided to kind of play the role as a lobbyist. She went in front of her county council to try to push back against a bill that large grocers were pushing onto small farmers, trying to push them out of the game. In the end, Deborah was not able to fight off these billion-dollar corporations. However, she was able to put caps on fees, permits, and certifications for farmers in her area. This was from the Farmers Coalition all the way back in 2011, told by Deborah Henderson herself. However, here in Orange County, fees are on the rise, and I think a similar action can be taken here in Orange County. The actions of such could lead to a more prosperous community, cheaper food, and safer food for you and me. This happened all the way back in 2011. However, many counties, cities, and states haven't followed in suit. However, I think this is extremely plausible, especially for a prosperous county like Orange County. I think that due to the high cost to keep up with food safety regulations, small vendors and local farmers should receive reduced costs on certifications, permits, and fees, as well as for home-based sellers. First, I will outline the challenges sellers go through when going through compliance costs and certification fees. Then I will go through the causes of these financial barriers and the why. Finally, I will go through the solutions to foster success for our community. First, let's outline the problems. Many farmers struggle with profitability of their businesses. They have to assume a lot of costs. These are upfront. This is payment just to go to these farmers markets, for the rental of the booth, for transportation of their product, for the labor, for the compliance costs to comply with federal regulations. This isn't just making sure their food area is clean. This is making sure that they have the right materials. This is making sure they have the right gloves, the right materials for the safety of their customers. And this can add up. This is before it even touches your hand at the farmer's market. And on top of that, they also have to pay for fees to get these certifications. In order to even hand food to you for you to sample, they can be paying upwards of $900. And this is a renewed application. And from Danny Montes' 2012 dissertation, Sustaining Farmers Markets in Low-Income Urban Areas, she explains the importance of farmers markets in low-income areas and how they prosper in the community. She also explains a few farmers' first-hand accounts of their struggles within these communities. One farmer said, I don't think we're going again because it wasn't very profitable. Unless we can break even, we can't afford to go. This is the reality for many farmers. They can't even afford to get to these farmers markets. And when they do, they can barely even break even. This makes it extremely hard for farmers to even want to join the industry, which can make the industry very bleak and allocate resources only to bigger business and completely drive out smaller ones. Michael Jacobs' 2001 article, Burdens of Food Regulations for Small Business, he says, quote, all measures which no doubt impose safety, they imply extra cost. All of these safety regulations are extremely important for us, and we want our food to be safe. However, they can be extremely expensive for these vendors, for these sellers, for these home-based sellers, and it can lead to them not even being a part of the industry. Another problem is that home-based sellers tend not to even get permits. According to the Orange County's website and the healthcare agency, they say that all at-home sellers for food need to get cottage food operation licenses. They have a whole agency for this, and these can be extremely expensive. According to Kay Kane, the Almanac, and his article Inside Facebook Marketplace's Largely Unregulated Foods Business in 2020 and 2036, he explains that this process can be expensive and this is also a renewing process, and it can be hard to even get into. It can be very complicated. Some sellers might not even know that they need to get this, and this can change from county, from city to state, and these can be different from county to city to state based on how expensive it is, and some might have to get multiple based on their operation status. One of the causes for these issues can be the funding and the resources it takes for the government. The government does need to profit from these permits since they do need to pay their workers, and this can be extremely expensive. So according to Sindapai and Hutton's 2026 article, he also determines that success comes from hygiene. For many of these businesses, if they follow these compliance costs, it can lead to long-term profitability. However, like according to Orange County's healthcare website, again, they say that this money funds things such as they can fund health inspectors, they can fund the actual permit process, and it also funds environmental protection acts. So some of the excess actually does go back to the farmers. So this is an extremely important process for us. Another cause of these problems can be the permit system and the system overall itself. According to Michael Jacobs' article, he says that small businesses handle everything. They handle the permits, the certifications, the fees, they handle all of it. However, big businesses, they have lawyers, they have entire teams for that, and they have more money to allocate towards those smaller fees, which are small for them but can be huge for a smaller business. Kay Kane's article also explains that on Facebook Marketplace that some sellers completely curb these compliance costs, and some who are going through the process of getting these certifications have to compete with people who aren't even getting them. So these people who aren't going through the process to make sure your food is safe are actually profiting more. And finally, I will get into the solutions. There are a few processes. The main process we're going to follow is how Deborah Henderson went through, where she proposed to the county council. You can propose you can give your proposal to the county council, and mine would be that I think we should charge based on the size of the business and the success of the business, based on how many people are working there, based on the profitability of the business, and based on how many years they've been running. So smaller businesses wouldn't have to be paying the same amount as a large grocery store. Once I propose that, then you could try to get other agencies on board, such as the Orange County Healthcare Agency, which would deal with this because this would increase health standards, because this would lead more people to get the cheaper certifications. And then on top of that, you could get the Agricultural Commission, because that does deal with farmers, and smaller farmers are also a part of that, and they would be on board with having cheaper costs to operate. And also, you could look at our budget, which the Orange County website says was $10.5 billion this year. And a small amount of that could go to profiting to our farmers and smaller vendors and at-home sellers to try to make a more diverse food industry. So today I went over the challenges sellers experience with compliance costs. Then I went over the causes of these barriers. And finally, I went over the solutions. So when we look at this proposal, we aren't looking at trying to repeal food safety acts. We are trying to increase them, actually, and we are trying to make it more accessible to everyone here in Orange County. Thank you.